Let's bring in some of my NBC News colleagues now. Ken Dilanian is covering the Iranian campaign hack story. Shaquille Brewster is in Springfield, Ohio. Vaughn Hillyard is covering the Trump campaign, and Mike Memoli is covering the Harris campaign. Ken, I have to start with you. Let's talk about these allegations that Iran hacked into the Trump campaign. What do we know, and what does the fallout look like?
So the FBI has confirmed that they believe that Iran hacked into the Trump campaign, tried to hack into the Biden campaign in an effort to interfere, similar to what the Russians did back in 2016, to steal information and to put it out in the public. They've offered it to journalists. But according to 3 law enforcement officials, what you just heard from Donald Trump there is flatly false. They've said that there's no evidence that anybody in the Biden-Harris campaign who received emails containing stolen information even opened the emails. They may have thought they were spear phishing emails. Many of us get those every day, and we disregard them because to open them it risks putting malware on your computer. And so and that's what the Biden-Harris campaign says. And they said that, in fact, they didn't learn that they were targeted in this way until the FBI came to them and said, hey, you received these emails. And so the other interesting thing is that the FBI added that the Iranians continue to try to peddle this information to news organizations. So far, to our knowledge, no news organization has published any of the stolen material.
You know, it's interesting because there's a big question about what exactly is material that we're talking about. Do you have any reporting at this point about what the material is?
The only thing that's been out there is that it included an internal campaign dossier on J.D. Vance, you know, the kind of thing that campaigns do. You do research on yourself. What are his vulnerabilities? And the sense you're getting from reading between the lines is that it wasn't all that interesting. It really wasn't something that news organizations felt compelled to publish, particularly when they know it's the fruits of a foreign intelligence operation. This is in 2016. People back then uncritically and without really thinking just blasted out emails that were stolen by the Russians. People are taking another look at whether that's appropriate.
Well, right. And you remember back in 2016 when former president, then candidate Trump said, Russia, if you're listening, basically hack into Hillary Clinton's emails. Talk a little bit about the disparity in terms of what he's saying right now versus how he treated hacked material back in 2016. That's
the most famous quote, but the campaign had a pattern of welcoming Russian assistance, working with WikiLeaks. There was a 2020 report by the Senate Intelligence Committee, bipartisan. Marco Rubio co-authored it, that said that that was a counterintelligence nightmare, that the Trump campaign opened themselves up to manipulation by Russian intelligence by cooperating with that effort and showing no qualms. And Donald Trump never ever had a qualm about using any of the material stolen by the Russians.
Just very quickly, what happens next in this investigation, Ken?
The Justice Department is intimating that they're going to file charges in this case, but it's likely to be against people who are overseas and outside the reach of U.S. justice.
All right. Ken Dilanian, thank you for kicking us off. Appreciate it. Let's go out into the field. Shaq Brewster, you are covering these false allegations and the impact of them that the Trump campaign is making about migrants abusing pets in Springfield, Ohio. Now Trump says he's actually going to visit Springfield. What are people there telling you about that?
Well, we just heard from officials. We heard from the governor, Mike DeWine. We heard from the mayor here. And they're essentially saying it's their preference if Donald Trump doesn't make that visit, doesn't make that trip to Springfield. And they say it's essentially because resources here are already strained. They're already at a breaking point. And it really goes back to those threats. Ever since Donald Trump went on the debate stage and made these unfounded and debunked claims, you've seen a flood, a wave of threats throughout the Springfield communities. Those threats have targeted schools and colleges, have targeted businesses here in this area. And when you talk to people here, the word you continue to hear is fear. People saying that they're scared. I want you to listen to what some parents told us at one elementary school that was evacuated just last week. Listen to what they said as they are now having their kids return to school.
The lies that people are putting out there that's not true. Them people did not eat no cats or no dogs. That's a lie.
I was also enraged because I know that a lot of it is rooted in lies against the community that has shown me a lot of love.
Have you ever felt the fear that you're describing?
No, not.
This is new.
No, this is new. This is new for us. Yeah. We can say that.
That last gentleman that you just heard from is the manager of a restaurant in this town. He's a Haitian immigrant himself, and he says just this week he's been picking up the phone and people have been having hate-filled calls, essentially saying, what's the cat on the menu today? He talks about the fear that he's feeling in his community. And just to give you the overlap, and the sense of overlap, he was actually shopping at the Walmart that was evacuated yesterday because of another hoax bomb threat. The impact on this community is widespread, and up to today, it's continuing.
Well, and Shaq, just to follow up with you, there have been some 30 bomb threats against the city, right? I mean, this is a community that is really dealing with a new reality in terms of the fear that they're experiencing.
Exactly, and those threats lead to resources being exerted. And this is a town. You know, you had one official saying, look, this is not New York City. This is not Chicago. They're not used to having big events come to their town. So, for example, when we talk about the threats to the schools, well, the governor had to launch state troopers, about 36 state troopers, to go to each of the school buildings in this town. And they go through every morning and essentially sweep for explosives, and then are also stationed there throughout the day to make parents and students feel safe. So you have that on top of the idea that former President Trump is expected. He says he'll be visiting here at some point in the next 2 weeks. The local officials are saying we're already strained, we're already dealing with a lot, and any visit from any presidential candidate with all the resources that are required to secure those kind of events are just not welcome at this time. And that's nothing to say about the false threats, false claims, I should say, about the Haitian immigrant community here.
And it comes as Vivek Ramaswamy is set to hold a town hall there tonight. Of course, a former presidential candidate, a Trump supporter. Yeah. What are you watching for there, and how are people responding to that?
Yeah, you know, the town manager was actually asked about that event directly, and he essentially said that it adds an additional level of security strain to what they're already dealing with, even an event like that. According to Ramaswamy, according to that press release, we know that he's going to have this town hall later this evening. He says that it'll include community members, including immigrants from Haiti. We'll see what that looks like. We're expecting to be there and to have at least a camera there to kind of see what those interactions are like. But look, this is a town where you have a cultural event that was scheduled for later this month. It was already canceled. You had a local debate with politicians already canceled because of the threats. It's a town, when you talk to people, again, they are scared. And while they are proud to be in their town, very proud people here, they don't like the attention that they've been getting. And it's something that, when you listen to officials, is increasingly harmful, and it's causing a chilling effect here.
All right. Well, we know you will continue to report out the fallout. Thank you so much, Shaq Brewster. Really appreciate it. Vaughn, let me turn to you now. Let's talk about this new strategy inside the Trump campaign, not just vilifying the immigrants in Springfield, but also basically trying to make the case that the Biden campaign, former Biden campaign, what's now the Harris campaign, used that hacked material from Iran, again, without any evidence. So it's yet another instance of trying to use baseless claims to gin up support. Is it working?
Right. He did this on the campaign trail. He posted overnight on his social media account saying that Kamala Harris should resign as VP, that she is disgraced. I mean, let's be very clear. We're 47 days away from the general election, and the Republican nominee is using words like disgrace and that she should resign from running for president because her campaign received some of this hacked material. As Ken laid out, it's not clear whether those officials from the campaign even were aware that they received campaign hacked material or not. The Department of Justice, the FBI, have not alleged that the Harris campaign attempted to use any of the material that they received. But you asked about the double standard. Number one, in 2016, Donald Trump repeatedly used the hacked material that came from WikiLeaks, and he used it even after the Director of National Intelligence's office and the FBI in early October of 2016 put out a public statement saying such. I want to also let you listen, because a couple years later, in 2019, this conversation came up again, and it was put to Donald Trump. Take a listen.
If foreigners, if Russia, if China, if someone else offers you information on an opponent, should they accept it or should they call the FBI?
I think maybe you do both. I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening. If somebody called from a country, Norway, we have information on your opponent. Oh, I think I'd want to hear it.
You want that kind of interference in our elections?
It's not an interference. They have information. I think I'd take it.
Again, there's no evidence of any wrongdoing by the Harris campaign, but Donald Trump is trying to extrapolate what we do know as clearly a major threat from Iran, but one where it appears at this point in time the Harris campaign didn't try to capitalize, yet Donald Trump is now trying to politically capitalize off of trying to make a story out of something that right now is not clear that it was actually a story.
It's just remarkable to go back and to remember that portion of that interview back in 2019. Vaughn, here we are a couple of weeks out from the first debate between Trump and Harris. Not clear that there's going to be a second one. Strategically, I mean, he has been so focused on Springfield. He now says he's going to visit Springfield. He's going to visit Aurora. You and I both know the top issue is the economy, and Trump supporters think that's still his strongest issue. Talk about immigration, talk about the economy, two issues where he gets higher marks than Kamala Harris does. But this ginning up this false narrative about Springfield, they are concerned, based on my conversations, is actually hurting his momentum. What are you hearing? What's the view inside Trump world now, this many weeks out from the debate?
I think what is notable about his 2024 campaign is really he is the chief strategist. Yeah. He is the chief communications director. He is effectively the campaign manager that's go around, and the operation around him exists and operate off of what he wants them to do. And so for him, the immigration issue is something that he's comfortable. We saw in 2016. We saw him talk about the Trojan horse and about Muslim immigrants coming to the United States. We heard him talk about the caravans in 2018 and 2020. This is an area where he feels comfortable talking about and putting this out into the ether here. And so, of course, when you're talking about the threats that these migrant communities are facing, and those including the Haitians who are legally here under a temporary protected status, this really hits at the heart of the Democrats' message that he is alienating a part of what is the American population. But for Donald Trump, he believes that immigration, Americans are looking for somebody who is tough and somebody who is going to look out after American jobs. And that is why we saw at the Republican National Convention, when we were there, Kristen, we saw those signs, mass deportations now, because Donald Trump believes that ultimately, when it comes down to it, that's a winning message for him.
Do you think he will be going to Springfield? Did his announcement that those are his plans, was that something that was planned? Did it catch some of his campaign officials off guard?
We're waiting for an official announcement. And as you know, Kristen, over the last 9 years, Donald Trump oftentimes says he's going to do something, whether it release policy or go somewhere over the course of 2 weeks. There's a good number of times that doesn't actually happen. Maybe he does go to Springfield, Ohio. Of course, as Shaq was just laying out, it would be quite the event to have him go into this neighborhood that has been through a lot over the last 2 weeks here. But for Donald Trump, of course, Ohio is a state that he picked up in 2016 and 2020 here. And for him in the Midwest, Wisconsin, voters there, they had their mail ballots start being sent to them here today. So for Donald Trump, again, that is really the epicenter, almost in a way, figuratively, and potentially literally, of his campaign right now and the message that he's going to with these closing days before folks get their mail ballots.
Yeah, it is just stunning that people are starting to get their ballots. All right, Vaughn, thanks so much for your great reporting. Really appreciate it. Let's head out to Mike Memoli now. Mike, what's the view right now inside the Harris campaign? Obviously, Pennsylvania, we got these new polls showing that the race is all tied up there. It is hard to see, quite frankly, either candidate winning without Pennsylvania. So what is the Harris's view? What's their strategy right now as it relates to the Keystone State?
Well, Kristen, we're seeing a lot of attention on Pennsylvania throughout this campaign by the Harris campaign, just like we saw with the Biden campaign before. There is not a week that goes by where one of the major principals is not on the ground in this state, speaking to key voters, key constituencies. Don't forget how much time the vice president spent in Pennsylvania with the debate in Philadelphia, just preparing for the debate across the state in Pittsburgh. And so even as they still look at the battleground map the way that they saw, the Biden team saw it, they look at those expansion states, as they called it in the 2020 Biden campaign, North Carolina, Georgia, where the vice president will be tomorrow. But there is almost no scenario involving the climb to 270 electoral votes that does not include Pennsylvania. And that's why you're going to see a continued effort by the campaign there. Vice President Harris continuing primarily to be in the big cities. We also saw her in the Scranton area last week. Governor Walz campaigning as he did in Erie, Pennsylvania, a place with a lot of swing voters, a lot of voters like those that President Biden considered his base. And we have heard the president himself talk about maybe going on a bus tour with the popular Governor Josh Shapiro to also hit some key communities. And so this is a state that I'm sure we're going to be spending a lot more time on, including probably in the last hours of this campaign, I'm willing to bet, Kristen.
Yeah, I think that is a safe bet to make, Mike. And let's talk about what's happening tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris will be appearing with Oprah. Back in 2008, when Oprah endorsed Barack Obama, it ultimately, in hindsight, did make a difference. What will you be watching for tonight? What do you think is going to come out of the evening?
Well, I think this event tonight stands really, puts in stark relief the contrast between these two campaigns right now. As you were just talking to Vaughn, the former president very much focused on this issue of migration in the context of Springfield, continuing to talk about these conspiracy theories about migrants, eating cats and dogs. Well, I find it so interesting, the audience that the vice president is trying to target tonight with her event with Oprah. We have seen the enthusiasm, the shift in these polls really largely reflects Democrats coming home, Democrats who weren't necessarily enthusiastic about Joe Biden, now saying they are enthusiastic about Kamala Harris. But the Harris campaign believes that the audience that will tune in tonight, the audience that Oprah helps bring to the table, are these voters we were talking a lot about in the Biden campaign, those who were fed up with politics, didn't want to engage in politics. They say they have 200,000 people registered to watch this virtual event tonight. They expect thousands more will be tuning in. This is a chance to reach some of those persuadable voters, people who are considering whether they even wanted to vote in this campaign. That's how the Harris views tonight's event. They think it's a real tremendous opportunity for her to reach some of those voters.
All right, Mike Memoli, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Always great to see you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.